Well, hello, folks. I hope you had a or are having a great weekend. I have some more thoughts because, yeah, I can't turn away. I'm looking at all these different perspectives on what's going on in the Middle East right now. I don't even want to say the names of the two sides. It's so emotional on all sides. I saw some piece by Gad Sad, and he was basically talking about causal blindness. And I was thinking, well, causes, there are complex causes for things. There are actions and reactions. There are motivations and reasons why people feel certain ways and why things happen. And human beings are complex. So, and we're also embedded in culture and circumstances. I grew up in Denver, spent a lot of time in Ireland as a kid. So that's my, context growing up, and I was okay. I was well taken care of and well loved. Everyone was alcoholics back then, so I had that to deal with, and I climbed into that just like a Savile Row suit. And, we all have our claim to a Gabor Mate form of trauma growing up, I suppose, but nothing like what people go through in Israel or Palestine or Yemen or, places around the world that we're familiar with, where there has been horrific things happening, genocides and whatever. So everyone's obviously and, you know, understandably emotional about it because it's horrific what's happening. I was also noticing that I saw a piece with Fareed Zakaria talking to another guy, New Yorker, investor. And I was thinking, there's this certain kind of people in the United States, Sam Harris, Fareed Zakaria, so many, who are fairly privileged in a certain kind of way. They have Ivy League educations, or maybe not. Maybe they went to Ohio State, but they're well educated, professional, built to fit in to the system, doing well within the system. Relatively speaking, maybe Fareed Zakaria doesn't think he's rich. You know, if he wanted to get rich, he said he would have been a hedge fund manager. Well, assuming that he would have been a good hedge fund manager, maybe he'd be wealthier than he is now, but he's certainly not poor. Anyway, these folks, intellectual influencers that we know, they seem to have this America right or wrong kind of attitude. Not really right or wrong, but America can do no wrong. Because at the core of American spirit, or Uncle Sam, or America as a concept, or the Constitution, or the founders, or whatever the hell it is that you worship about America, the American dream, or whatever, are great things, good things, wonderful things. And that if the world was just more American, if everybody just lined up and followed Uncle Sam's rules, the world would be perfect. It would be fine. Of course, this isn't true because vested interests and varying interests, corporations and other people and governments and things have their desires, their needs, their goals, their interests, and they're going to fight for them, control over them, because that's how you get wildly rich and powerful. And that's really what it's all about at the end of the day. People who defend the abstraction of America, right or wrong, or America's always best intentions, you know, are doing pretty well in the status quo, and they have no problem. They can't think out of the box because they can't imagine a better way. So it's always quotes like, well, democracy's a terrible system, but it's better than all the rest, and stuff like that. You can come up with millions of quotes like that. Well, it's not perfect, but it's the best we have. And therefore, we shouldn't try to imagine something better or create something better. And then I listened to Noam Chomsky talking about the situation in the Middle East in 2003, a long lecture with Q&A afterwards. You know, he's done a lot of work, a lot of reading, a lot of thinking about it over the decades, and, you know, he had a fairly good take on what's going on, realistic take, back in 2003. And here we are in 2023. What is that? That's, 20 years later, and we're right back in the same situation, headed in the same direction that Chomsky articulated there. So if you're one of these people who thinks more America is better for the world, then you're probably doing pretty well. And if you're not doing well in the States and you believe that, this is just the typical kind of, USA, 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 which is my way of saying USA, USA. So you're somebody who maybe isn't as privileged or fortunate, and you hate this group and that group and these people and those people and Democrats and QAnons and Trump and Biden and so on. You hate the other side because you're caught up in the culture wars. You're trained for that. This is a way of distracting you from what's really important. Bigger issues that are common to all people on Earth, as well as expressing yourself within your own unique culture in the most positive way you can within the context of your normal life. So the USA types, that's just a knee-jerk thing, Well, I hate Democrats, but I love America, this type of thing. So when people go to Afghanistan or Iraq or wherever to bleed and die and kill, they're not just from one party or one culture. There is diversity there, whether it's spoken of or not, in terms of gay people or whatever. And, they're there for good reasons, I suppose. You can think of many good reasons why someone might join the military and serve their country. They don't necessarily achieve what they want to, or many times they're disappointed by their service. Many times they're not. But that's not the point. The point is we can't seem to imagine what leadership should be like. Hamas or Israeli Likud or Democrat, Republican. And the world is in a crisis of leadership, in my opinion, because we have a very messed up ideology and socioeconomic system, religion that's running the world, the system's logic, as I call it. And we can't think our way out of it. So the optionality in the game theory or whatever are limited and becoming more and more limited, and will become more limited over time because we're painting ourselves into a box. But there's still a huge number of people who are in this America can do no wrong camp. And obviously it was a tumultuous America, when you want to call it from 1776 or, pick a date. But the development of North America involved a lot of different players over centuries, and a lot of different nations, including Native American nations and so on. There were a lot of wars fought over the centuries before America took its form that it's in today, and we have the borders that we know today. And after World War II, the Pax Americana, so-called, or whatever. Before then, Wilsonian period and so on, more isolationism, and you can look at it. I mean, it's just not one thing. It's a continuum of history, a huge gray scale spectrum over time. And you can talk about any of these periods in great detail if you want to do the work. But we're here today in our current configuration, and we somehow feel like this is a thing that's eternal and will never change and is better than all the rest. We're number one. We're number one. And I don't know how this particular way of playing the great game, this game theoretic way, although totally rational, reasonable, and workable, and it comes right out of our nature, human nature. It's hard to think of people playing any differently, but at the end of the day, it gets us in big trouble. So while we're not paying attention to things that are important like peace and our environment and so on, how to create healthy communities, healthy cultures, all kinds of different cultures around the world that are healthy, and treating their environment in such a way that ensures that life on Earth is healthy and robust and vibrant and diverse and so on. These kind of values, I could be the kind of YouTuber where I come on and tell you how to pick up chicks and make $1 million and invest your money, or I could rail about religion or anti-religion or atheism or creationism, something like that, and you'd get millions of clicks. Or I could just review camera gear, or give people $10,000 to eat 100 cheeseburgers, and I'd be monetized and making money and have ads on my channel and all that kind of thing. And I'd be cool, but I'm not cool because I'm curious about how things work, about reality, and I know that takes work, time and energy. So sometimes I have to spend my time and energy thinking about things, reading things, and so on, looking at different perspectives. It doesn't make me the kind of oracle or influencer that can come on and tell you the answers, what the truth is. I can only say that you can embark on an adventure, which is discovering more about the way things are, about reality. I'll just use that as a kind of a bucket, reality. And that could be quite fun for you, and it could be advantageous for you, and it could help you with your life. One has to be humble in the face of such a project because we don't know it all. And AI isn't going to save us. General artificial intelligence isn't going to save us. Science, engineering, and technology isn't going to save us. Mythology and storytelling and meaning making and sense making and various kinds of religions and new ways of, demonstrating and worshiping and rituals and whatnot aren't going to save us. We're in a complex universe. We're complex creatures, evolved creatures on this particular planet. And we are limited. We have limitations. But we can always work towards a greater understanding of one another. the theory of mind and compassion and empathy is really the uncanny valley that machines have to cross before they're anything like human. And human beings are biological systems. We're embodied creatures, and we're embedded in culture with language and writing and all that kind of stuff. I always find it interesting to look at the Minoans, or what, like the early, ancient times, like 6,000 years BC or whatever, and their mythology, Dionysus and things like that, how people thought of the world and how they developed writing and all of these stories and whatnot. This flows forth from our nature and our imagination. It's freaking interesting. But now we have jet airplanes and Airbnbs and bolts and whatnot, and apps on our phones. And we just think we're so fucking smart. And we can dial into our bubble and our echo chambers and reinforce our kind of warped perception of ourselves as a performer within the status quo of this particular kind of absurdist theater that we call culture today. I think what's at stake now is civilizational. It's how we develop as human beings or not. And so at some point, we're going to have to stop supporting this zero-sum Thucydides trap that says that there can be only one empire. It's either going to be we're all Americans, or we're all Chinese, or we're all Russians, or we're all Nigerians, or we're all Indonesians. Come on, the only powerful country in the world right now, really, really powerful, is the United States, and then China's making a great effort. But we all have problems. And sometimes I think the United States is just pathological. It's a sick society, a sick culture. But of course, I know so many healthy Americans who are beautiful. And there's a lot of good things about my country of birth. But, I can say that about Chinese people because I spent a lot of time in China, But I think there are places that are a little less arrogant, a little less narcissistic, a little less pathological. You have to invade Mexico because what? Because you have a demand for drugs in America? Because people want to take pain pills and snort cocaine? Why don't you ask why? Why do you want, if Gad Sad's going to talk about amnesia of causes, why don't you want to go into the complex causes of drug addiction and alcoholism and all of these kind of metabolic syndrome diseases that are prevalent in the United States, rather than just say the suppliers, the growers of coca or the growers of hemp or pot or marijuana, whatever you want to call it, the makers of crack cocaine or anything else. It's they're at fault because they're creating the supply that we want. Why do we want it? Why? And of course, if any country wants to take over any other country's territory, why? Why? What are you afraid of? Was the United States going to destroy Russia no matter what, and use Ukraine as a battleship to do that, or not? Should Russia fear NATO or not? Should NATO fear Russia or not? What was going on when things were more peaceful? Anyway, fear works, fear kills, war works. It's all profitable and highly profitable. And, a small percentage of elite people make shitloads of money and gain shitloads of power by being apologists for the status quo because it works out for them. They would be irrational and stupid not to. So, if it's working, a certain perspective is working, preaching to the choir on Sam Harris's platform, or what Fareed Zakaria said was he wants to be on CNN because he can have greater impact. So somehow he has a lot of faith in his impact, in the kind of impact that his work makes. But I understand what he's saying. CNN's everywhere, so you can talk to everyone. You might not, make a lot of money, but it's a great platform if you want to reach a lot of people. But let's not talk about whether or not certain propaganda arms from the corporate and public sector, meaning the government, are too involved in the kind of stories that we hear on cable news. But to find out about that, all you have to do is read some books and read the sources that the authors have drawn from, and try to understand who these authors are, what their biases are, and think for yourself. So if you literally just turned off the TV and spent 2 hours a day reading, that's not too big an ask, maybe, I don't know. I think it'd be very good for you intellectually and spiritually and emotionally. But anyway, to each his own, or her own, or its own, or their own, or whatever. But yeah, we have to be very careful about getting too emotional and getting too wrapped up in certain kinds of messaging and information bubbles, because this problems like what we see in the Middle East have been going on for a long time. Remember, the United States just extricated itself from 20 years of war in Afghanistan. Did they defeat the Taliban and replace the government there with something like an American democracy? Is that really possible? We have no consideration for other cultures, no appreciation for other cultures or different kinds of music or traditions. Somehow, if we could only just turn Afghanistan into another state and have all of our kinds of dysfunctional governments and leadership, the Afghan people would be much better off. Maybe. I don't know. How would I know? Couldn't possibly know. That's an experiment that's never going to happen. Yeah, it didn't work in Iraq. It didn't work in Vietnam. Although now you go to Vietnam and it's more Americanized than it was before the war. I don't know how French it was in the 1950s, but, in certain ways, but it's still Vietnamese. It's still Vietnam. It's a very unique culture, unique place. And the North and the South are different. Hanoi is a gigantic city, Ho Chi Minh City, and they're different, just like Beijing and Shanghai, or New York and Los Angeles. But we all have the same kind of toys and technologies and things we take for granted. And that's all pretty nice, I guess, for people. But there's a limit to the capacity of and the quality and kind of growth that we can maintain if we're only concerned about a certain kind of economic paradigm. That's why I constantly recommend people to listen to podcasts like Nate Hagen's. If you're not going to read Vaclav Smil and dozens of other people that write about energy and these kinds of things, it's important to note that there are limits to certain kinds of growth, obviously, and there are certain kinds of growth that kill. We know that because we have cancer. And we are living in an omnicidal heat engine killing machine that we call modern industrial society. And it will kill us eventually. Now, you might feel comfortable that your children are going to do fine. And once they get out of Yale, they're going to get a status quo gig and they're going to live really nice lives or become YouTube influencers and make huge amounts of money or whatever your hope is for them. Join the NFL. But if you look at reality, you know there are constraints there that we can't control and deal with. And geoengineering isn't the answer, and being in the cloud isn't the answer. Transhumanism isn't the answer. And I'm sorry, influencer, you're not going to live to be 200 years old. I can pretty much guess that that's not going to happen for you, but I guess it's possible. But probable? I don't think so. But anyway, if you want to believe that, that's fine. But that's for you and yours, right? People as smart as you are, as good as you are, as vain as you are. But not for the rest of those suckers. They're all idiots, right? Man, I don't know what it's going to take, but if we need AI to cross that uncanny valley towards compassion and empathy and theory of mind and understanding reality, how are we going to have that if we're not that? We train the AI on us. Is human nature that good? Maybe the spaceships are just passing Earth right by. Boule MT, out.